Welcome into Monday. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. 3 segments for you. We've got conversation about rural health care and whether or not the big, beautiful bill that President Donald Trump signed on Independence Day is going to impact rural hospitals. We'll hear from Vice President J.D. Vance on that issue, but also Governor J.B. Pritzker and the Illinois Hospital Association holding a roundtable late last week. So we'll touch on that. Also, we'll have a live conversation about artificial intelligence in schools and a program that's aiming to try to get young kids to better understand the artificial intelligence tool as just that, a tool that can be used for good, but also for bad. So that's another conversation we're going to have here live coming up just in moments. But first, we got to get to the latest conversation about what's going to happen with public safety. Donald Trump, President of the United States, using the National Guard in Washington, D.C. Late last week, he said Chicago's next. And then we get more headlines out there about that and more. So plenty to talk about this morning. Thanks for being with us here for Illinois in Focus Daily. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Wake up with us each and every weekday morning here for more Illinois in Focus Daily.
Make an example at this right here first. Please come here first, because you know what? We're going to help you.
We're going to make our country very safe. We're going to make our cities very, very safe. Chicago's a mess. You have an incompetent mayor, grossly incompetent, and we'll straighten that one out probably next. That'll be our next one after this, and it won't even be tough. And the people in Chicago, Mr. Vice President, are screaming for us to come. They're wearing red hats.
The president has always been intimidated by the intellectual prowess of black men. And so, of course, he would speak in those petite and puerile terms.
That's just some of the debate over public safety in the city of Chicago and beyond. Welcome in. It's Illinois in Focus Daily with the Center Square. Go to thecentersquare.com and you can find this headline: Trump plans to clean up Democrat-run cities over local objections. Clearly something that's going to be dominating headlines as you see National Guard on the streets of Washington, D.C. to go after public safety there. But Friday, the president was talking in the Oval Office about a big European football tournament coming to the United States, I believe in L.A., and they're focused on public safety. But also, this comes about 2 weeks or so after Trump ordered the National Guard to help with public safety in Washington, D.C. So that's where we're at here with this conversation. I'm Greg Bishop. You can join us each and every weekday morning here live for Illinois in Focus Daily. Get the podcast where you get podcasts, but also don't forget, if you want this headline and others free in your inbox, go to thecentersquare.com, click on newsletter, fill out the info. It is free, and you will get these headlines and more, especially from Illinois as well. We're a nonprofit newswire service, so we also greatly appreciate any donations. But let's get to it, all right? So President Trump in the Oval Office discussing, economic activity with, soccer tournaments coming to the United States. And he also went on to say that, hey, we're going to be starting to clean up other cities as well.
Also, we're going to make our country very safe. We're going to make our cities very, very safe. Chicago's a mess. You have an incompetent mayor, grossly incompetent, and we'll straighten that one out probably next. That'll be our next one after this, and it won't even be tough. And the people in Chicago, Mr. Vice President, are screaming for us to come. They're wearing red hats, just like this one, but they're wearing red hats. African-American ladies, beautiful ladies, are saying, please, President Trump, come to Chicago. Please. I did great with the black vote, as you know, and they want something to happen. So I think Chicago will be our next.
So back in December, this is after the election, it's clear that President Donald Trump's going to get a second non-consecutive term. You had the city of Chicago City Council meet and a slew of residents taking to the microphone during public comments, sharing their thoughts. And at this time, the real focus was the illegal immigration that was pretty profound during the Biden administration over the 4 years there, with 14 million. I think President Trump says it's upwards of 21 million people who cross the border illegally, not through a legal port of entry, but crossing the border illegally. So, there was a big concern there, but the public safety aspect also very important. But back in December, you had residents in Chicago stand up and share their thoughts.
Trump, Tom Homan, make an example out this Negro right here first. Please come here first, because you know what? We're going to help you. We want a forensic
Ma'am, I would
audit.
ask that you
keep
your, hold on a second, stop her time.
You told Trump you ain't gonna blink? Well, we ain't either. You ain't above the law. And where you gonna run to when Trump pours that Trump card out on you?
There's a 10-year prison sentence when you want to stand up here for those illegals.
So again, that was back in December, Trump saying that people in Chicago are screaming for him to come to the city and clean up the city. Trump was asked again Friday if he's had any conversation with Chicago city officials.
You said Chicago might be next. Are you making, have there been concrete steps that the administration is taking to do that? Or what are other cities as well?
I haven't spoken to the mayor. He's grossly incompetent. I haven't spoken to the mayor. No, when we're ready, we'll go in and we'll straighten out Chicago, just like we did D.C. Chicago is very dangerous, great place. I built great stuff there. I have the most beautiful building in Chicago, I think. But I hate to see what's happened to Chicago. Chicago is our greatest city, actually. Bob Tisch, a great friend of mine, passed away. He used to own the Giants and very successful Lowe's. He said Chicago, I think they had their main office in Chicago. He said Chicago and San Francisco are the two greatest cities in the world. Now you look at what the Democrats have done to San Francisco. They've destroyed it. I own a big chunk of the Bank of America building in San Francisco. And, it's just different. We can clean that up, too. We'll clean that one up, too. If everything works out, and we've already had calls from other cities, quiet calls from Democrats. We'd love you to come here, because they've lost control of their cities. I'm not going to say, because I don't want them to lose their elections. But we've had calls from Democrats and calls from people generally. We'd love you to come here, because we'll straighten out the problem.
So the president focused on public safety, and you've got Chicago residents who are, again, taking to the city council during public comments, saying that they want public safety, they want the illegal immigration stopped. And then you've got, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, who, when the president, a week and a half ago or so, had made similar comments when he announced, this was 2 weeks ago, when he announced that the National Guard was going to be helping police the streets in D.C., he had signed an executive order then that would essentially say that the president's going to deploy National Guard in other areas. Then there's reporting over the weekend that there's a dozen plus states where this may be happening. But again, President Trump saying Chicago may be next. And here's Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson 2 weeks ago. The President Trump saying Chicago may be next. And here's Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson 2 weeks ago.
Address this. Thanks.
Please answer that question. If you
Okay, fine. Since you are begging, I do believe that Donald Trump is intimidated. I think you're begging.
No interruption.
So let me just answer that. I do appreciate you begging. So I would just say it like this, that the president has always been intimidated by the intellectual prowess of black men. And so, of course, he would speak in those petite and puerile terms because he's small.
So Johnson, essentially doing ad hominem here, but you have the Johnson administration putting out a statement that says this, and let me pull this up so we can view it together and you can read it for yourself. But Mayor Brandon Johnson releases this statement essentially saying that we're in active communication with counterparts at the county and state level to prepare for any potential unconstitutional military deployments in Chicago. The governor, Cook County Board President, and I are complete alignment. Chicago is not calling for military occupation of our city. We're currently evaluating all our legal options to protect the people of Chicago from unconstitutional federal overreach. In Chicago, we have effectively reduced all forms of violent crime by doing what works: constitutional policing, violence prevention, and investing in our communities. This past year alone, we've seen a more than 30% reduction in homicides, 35% reduction in robberies, and almost 40% reduction in shootings. We need to keep building on this work. No matter what happens, the city of Chicago will not waver. We are Chicago. We will not bend or cower, and we will never break. And that, again, is Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson releasing that statement after you have the ongoing back and forth about public safety. Governor J.B. Pritzker also releasing a statement, but several weeks ago when the president was making the National Guard movements in Washington, D.C., making statements that he could go to Chicago next, even 2 weeks ago. Here's Governor Pritzker then responding to that.
There is a law on the books confirmed by the Constitution called posse comitatus. And it means that the federal government does not have a right to send soldiers into American cities for the purpose of, well, for any purpose really, but specifically to fight crime, let's say. And that is what he's suggesting that he will do, violate that law. It's not surprising to me that he suggests violating the law. He's done it many times and been convicted of it 34 times. And so I would just say he has absolutely no right and no legal ability to send troops in to the city of Chicago. And so I reject that notion.
And the governor releasing a statement also on this issue. But Friday, he was asked about the issue of, possibly having the National Guard come in or more federal enforcement of illegal immigration and even, some prospects that some people are saying these elected officials blocking federal officials from doing federal law enforcement could go and arrest those individuals blocking federal law enforcement.
Their threat to arrest me and the mayor of Chicago and other. No, they have not followed. Their threat to arrest me and the mayor of Chicago and other. No, they have not followed up. I mean, I'm sure that they're plotting in a room somewhere with Kash Patel and Pam Bondi to try to figure out some way to come after us. Honestly, I'm unafraid. I'm not daring them to do anything. I'm just saying they don't have a right to federal law and state law, separate endeavors, and they don't have a right to do the things that they're threatening to do. That hasn't stopped them sometimes, I hate to say, but I haven't heard anything further. It's been a couple of days, as you may have read, that since we responded to their latest threat.
And again, that was in reference more to the enforcement of federal immigration law, but clearly something that we're going to continue to be seeing unfold here in Illinois, and with the Trump administration making their moves, pretty fascinating, and we'll keep you posted on that and more. So again, go to thecentersquare.com and you can stay up to date with the latest. It's all right here with the Center Square. I'm Greg Bishop, and this is Illinois in Focus Daily. All right, stand by, setting up a live interview.
The One Big Beautiful Bill Act does include a $50 billion
Are you guys using artificial intelligence in your daily life? I've got friends who are using ChatGPT almost like a glorified Google. Got a piece of technology that you need to learn about, but you don't want to flip through that small print book, and you just got a simple question. You can ask ChatGPT or Grok or any of the other publicly available artificial intelligence models to quickly get a narrative of what you're looking for. It's very similar to Google, but it just goes a bit further and spells it out to you instead of having you click through links. But how is it impacting children and their educational development? I think that's something that's definitely worth a continued conversation here, and we'll do that with Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. You can wake up with us each and every weekday morning here for more of Illinois in Focus Daily. And I want to connect now with Mark Hurley. He is a retired Air Force colonel, and he's been delving deep into the issue of artificial intelligence. He joins us now here with Illinois in Focus Daily. Mark, thanks for taking time with us. And if we could just let's go right into it with where we're at in this space of artificial intelligence, especially when it comes to education and young minds developing. Good morning.
Good morning to you. How are you doing today?
So far, so good. And it's Monday, and we've got plenty going on.
Absolutely. So about 3 years ago, you and I did a couple of interviews talking about the need for a digital Bill of Rights, and really, there has been no movement on that. We really need to have protections in place against AI from an individual liberties perspective. And now we're seeing that they're about to use artificial intelligence in public schools. And so we're a little concerned that what our children are able to feed, because that's really what you're doing, is you're feeding information to these AI programs. So we had a conference about 3 weeks ago as part of Networking the Networks. And it's a bunch of conservative organizations that came together and said, hey, what are the important issues that we're going to be dealing with? Well, one of them was artificial intelligence. And then another one was, of course, homeschooling, which is made the papers in the last 4 months with everything that's going on at the state capitol. And then more recently, you had legislation that was passed where they're going to be doing mental health screenings. Well, of course, they're going to use artificial intelligence to do those mental health screenings. And our problem is that we don't know where that information is going to. In other words, we're left as individuals, or our children are left without any protections on how that information is going to be used.
And Mark, if I could really quick, how do you think artificial intelligence could be used in that universal mental health screening? Because the governor did just sign a law that essentially says artificial intelligence cannot be used for direct mental health therapy, right? It can be used for logistics and, doing all the scheduling and whatnot, but at least in a professional capacity, AI cannot be a stand-in for a physical therapist.
For a physical therapist?
Well, for mental health issues. For mental health issues.
For mental health issues.
By physical, okay. I meant like a human being, right? It has to be a human being doing mental health work.
Absolutely. So here's what's happening within some of the other states, not necessarily Illinois, but within other states, you have a situation in which these AI buddies are being created. So they're sort of like personal friends. Okay. And so we already have court cases that are going on right now where AI is being sued because you had a situation where a 9-year-old, for instance, had developed this AI buddy in which they had it started distancing himself from his parents. Okay. You had another situation in which you have AI, it is believed, created such a reflection of the depression of a teenager that he ended up committing suicide. Okay, so let's talk about what AI is and what AI isn't. It is not emotional. It is not empathic. It is not sympathetic. Okay, so whatever you feed to it, it's going to reproduce back to you. So if I give it depression, it's going to give you back depression. Does that make sense? It's not going to provide
it's a language learning model. It's something that is fed off of your prompts.
That's correct. So we have to teach our students and our children how this can be dangerous for their lives. And we have a situation where a lot of us would love to avoid teaching our children anything about AI. Unfortunately, we have international competition where the Chinese are actually teaching their kids starting at age 6 about artificial intelligence and about coding. And what's interesting is that's the same, if you think about AI as like a new language or a new understanding, a new system, well, that's also the time period where you might teach a youngster, 6 to 10, you teach them Spanish or you teach them English, depending on if they're from a foreign country, or you teach them French. See what I'm getting at?
Right.
So learning about AI as an integral part of your life is extremely important, okay? So what we're concerned about is that our information is already being shared, and it's being shared without our permission, okay? And without our knowledge. And so if we continue down that path, then we're going to have problems, and particularly our children will have problems that they'll no longer be able to really compensate for, because that data was taken about them at very young ages. So we have, there's a European commercial, and I wish I had sent that over to you, but I apologize. There's a European commercial that warns us about how 9-year-olds can be morphed into adults, and their information can be taken, and their basically identification can be stolen. Okay, so all sorts of things can happen to you, particularly in the realm of what's called biometrics. And biometrics are simply, your fingerprints, your voice print, your face recognition,
the retina of your eyeball. I mean, it's pretty remarkable what the biometrics really can capture.
Absolutely. And so that's extremely important. It's not only what the state does with it, okay, which you have already talked about, but it's also what does the federal government do with it?
Right.
What does the local governments do with it? Because now we're talking about school districts doing this. What does big tech do with it? Because we know we've made billionaires over the last 30 years because they've taken our data and they've shared it without our knowledge. And a lot of us sign contracts saying, yeah, I'm going to use Facebook so you can do whatever you want to, right? But that is wrong. Okay. And we're going to find ourselves in situations in the future where we're not going to be able to dig our way out.
We're talking with retired Air Force Colonel Mark Hurley about artificial intelligence, especially when it comes to how it's either being integrated or being used in schools. Well, you are part of a group that's looking at this program called the Shepard's Code, and you've touched on a lot of some of the negative things that AI could possibly be doing, or some of the questions about privacy and control over data and control even over how individuals interpret what AI is providing them. But it's also a powerful tool. There's no question it's going to be implemented in the medical space to help, quickly find what could be potential cures to diseases and such. It could be used to help with logistical questions and complex math equations to get to the answer of whatever needs to be answered quickly. But as any tool, it's got good and bad. But talk about Shepard's Code and what exactly you're doing with a private school to get young people to understand artificial intelligence as just that, a tool.
Well, and there are three goals basically that that are focused on the Shepherd's Code is what we call it. The first is we have to teach teachers about artificial intelligence and what its capabilities and what its harms are. The second is we have to help them develop programs within the classroom, okay, that can aid the classroom as a whole. And then the third, we're trying to develop individualized learning programs that could possibly help a student who may be falling behind. We saw a lot of that during COVID, where students were having trouble and they were falling behind, and we didn't really have the programs in place to help them. And so those are the types of things we're looking at, is from top to bottom. So we're working with a school called Arthur Christian School. It's a private school down in Arthur, Illinois. And we've had other homeschoolers who are also very interested in this. And so we're trying to bring in as many people as possible. And so we're looking at doing things of that nature. But ultimately, our goal is to teach students to think critically, okay? And it's important to do that because we're finding ourselves in an era in which the administrative state believes they're the experts, but they keep giving us wrong information. So we need to teach our children to think critically. We need to give our children real world experiences. And then the third thing is we need to teach them how to handle technology in the future, like AI, because it's going to take over their lives. And for those of us who are watching the changes going on in the financial community, it's extremely important as we move down a digital currency path, because then you can fall into situations like they did in China, where they had ESG scores. So if you didn't have a certain level of ESG score, you weren't going to get money to, buy food for your pet, or you weren't going to get, when you weren't allowed to go to other meetings and that type of thing.
Or even like, just simply cutting off your ability to purchase things because you don't have the proper social credit score, or you posted something wrong on social media. So, you're limited in your activity. Mark, finally here, and I know we've got to talk more in the future about the Digital Bill of Rights and the importance of getting that to, be something recognized all over the place. But just touch briefly on the Shepherd's Code's evangelical guidance that you're putting here to really get across to people in at least a private school setting how children need to be understanding artificial intelligence.
Absolutely. And you mentioned, the evangelical guidance that was written back in 2019. Okay. And we're using that as our base to start off with. But of course, we also have guidance from the Association of Christian Schools International. And so we're drawing in broad Christian guidance as best we can. In fact, we've been contacted by the Lutheran schools in the Springfield area to try and incorporate some of what they're doing as well. And so it's important because, AI should not replace human beings, okay? AI should not control human beings. And that's part of the guidance where if you believe in a higher God and in a heavenly Father, then that's your ultimate responsibility is to them. But it also links right to our Bill of Rights, where our founding fathers created that to protect us individually. And for instance, we are allowed to have due process, right? Whenever we're charged with something. Well, okay, so where's the ability to appeal when AI is wrong? And it can be wrong in many ways. Where's the ability to go to court? A lot of people don't realize that Europe, for instance, has laws in place. They have a strategic plan in place. The U.S. does not have a digital strategic plan in place. And so the regulations are just now being developed. And these are some of the important parts that we need to have in place that say, okay, you can't replace a human being. You can't control a human being from the state or from the federal level in which, without giving them the ability to opt out of an AI program, or giving them the ability to stop the use of their digital signature without their permission. You need to give people an out, okay? Which means being able to withdraw from systems that are hurting them.
Yeah, and I almost think there's probably going to be a contingent of people that say, how about we do it completely opposite, where the only way that people are going to take part in these systems is if they opt into the system, right? Instead of everybody being put in there and then all of a sudden they find out, oh, wait, I'm in the system? No, I want to opt out. So, Mark, there's plenty more we can talk about this. We're going to have to continue the conversation at another time. And I hate to spring this question up on you, and you don't have to answer this, obviously, because this isn't, what we're planning to talk about. But the last segment, we were just discussing the issue of the National Guard being used in Washington, D.C., and President Donald Trump saying Chicago could be next. As somebody who was in the service for a long time, a retired Air Force colonel, what are your thoughts about what we're seeing happen across the country when it comes to the focus of public safety, and in particular the Democrats' response that Trump is being tyrannical with some of these steps he's taking?
There are already laws in place, and as long as the president follows those laws, then I'm 100% in favor of what he's doing. Like what he's doing in Washington, D.C. He's totally within his legal abilities to do what he's doing and what he's asking to be done. There is a law in the books called Posse Comitatus, in which you're really not supposed to use active duty troops, okay, in a situation unless it's a pure emergency, like we did during pandemic, during COVID, and in like border security types of things. But you should never use against U.S. citizens active duty troops. So then the question is, well, what about National Guard members? Well, National Guard members have the ability to work for the governors directly, and they have the ability to work for the president under certain circumstances. We've seen them during floods, we've seen them during tornadoes, that type of thing. And so during winter storms, all of it. And so to the extent that he stays within the law, I am 100% behind him.
Mark Hurley, greatly appreciate you taking time with us this morning. And again, we'll have to continue the conversation about artificial intelligence, the Digital Bill of Rights, and so much more. So we'll talk again in the near future, all right?
Thanks, Greg. You have a great day.
You too. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and wake up with us each and every weekday morning right here with The Center Square. Get the headlines where you get headlines at thecentersquare.com. And you can get this podcast anywhere you get podcasts. Again, just go to thecentersquare.com.
One Big Beautiful Bill Act does include a $50 billion rural healthcare transformation. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act does include a $50 billion rural healthcare transformation program intended to support rural hospitals and providers. But I think we would all agree that when we're talking about $50 billion out of $1 trillion in cuts to Medicaid, that is woefully inadequate.
So our policy is very simple. Whether you're in a big city or a small town, we're going to fight for your access to health care. Whether you're an American citizen who's been here for 70 years or an American citizen who's been here for 2 years, we're going to fight for your access to a government that serves you. But if you're an illegal alien, you do not deserve government-paid health care benefits. You need to get out of our country, and that's as simple as that.
just some of the back and forth about health care and government subsidies through federal programs that states administer, and Democrats saying that people are going to die. Governor J.B. Pritzker said that a couple of weeks ago after the big, beautiful bill was signed into law. Also the concern that some have about rural hospitals, but you've got the White House saying, listen, their policy's simple. They're trying to make sure these social safety net programs are in place by getting people who shouldn't be accessing them off of them, and that includes illegal aliens. Welcome in. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. Final live segment here for you as we do each and every weekday morning. We go live at about 8 o'clock, giving you some things to know while you get your day going. I'm Greg Bishop, editor at thecentersquare.com. Go to thecentersquare.com and the Illinois page. Got a team that's helping put together all kinds of stuff, keep them posted on what's happening. But let's get to this debate. Last week, Governor J.B. Pritzker held a roundtable about rural health care, and what he said are some of the issues with the federal law that President Donald Trump signed back on Independence Day, the so-called Big Beautiful Bill that included trying to shore up social safety net programs. And here's the governor Friday with others in the health space talking about this issue.
And they are, hospitals like this one are working with razor-thin margins. And Medicaid has always been a vital federal program that enables rural hospitals to survive. And we need them to survive. They are providing health care in deserts, that at least areas that otherwise would be deserts. And it's because I think, like so many others who are in a kind of frontline field, it's because you care. It's because you decided to go into this kind of work because you want to care for the community, you want to care for people, and uplift them. And that is what we ought to be helping enable.
So again, the governor taking part in this roundtable, just talking about how important it is to care for people. But several weeks ago, he talked about how rural hospitals are going to close because of what he called MAGA Republicans passing this big, beautiful bill. He calls it a big, ugly bill. He says that people are going to die. And that's like a direct quote. But he also had the Illinois Hospital Association there, A.J. Wilhelmy leading that group, talking about rural hospitals. And he also touches on what the big, beautiful bill has, and that's a $50 billion fund that rural hospitals are going to be able to tap into to keep operations flowing.
So this increase in uncompensated care will put further pressure on hospitals and make it very difficult to maintain current service lines, as the governor said just a few minutes ago. And just want to put one point out there for everyone's consideration. We know that this law makes significant changes to provider taxes and state-directed payments. These changes are going to severely limit Illinois' ability to draw down federal Medicaid matching funds and greatly reduce Medicaid payments to hospitals. And, for rural hospitals, the reduction in Medicaid reimbursements will force them to make very painful decisions, including cutting services and reducing staff. And as the governor said, some rural hospitals may be forced to close. And when a rural hospital closes, and Dan said it, the consequences ripple far beyond health care. And the governor said it as well. These hospitals are often the largest employers in their communities, so a hospital closure means that lost jobs and a major blow to local economies. And so that's a significant factor in this discussion. So as we'll discuss today, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act does include a $50 billion rural healthcare transformation program intended to support rural hospitals and providers. But I think we would all agree that when we're talking about $50 billion out of $1 trillion in cuts to Medicaid, that is woefully inadequate. Nevertheless, these funds are critically important to rural hospitals and providers in this room and across the state of Illinois. So IHA and our member hospitals serving communities in rural Illinois look forward to working with the Pritzker administration on an application to the federal government to bring this vital funding to our hospitals and providers.
So you got this idea of the funds, right? How the federal government is going to have funds go to states and states administer that to go to rural hospitals or into the medical healthcare space, and getting services to people who need it, right? Life-saving services. But a lot of the characterization that Democrats have put on what they believe Republicans are doing is, we've heard Pritzker say this time and again, that, you know, the tax cuts and shoring up waste, fraud, and abuse for food stamps or for Medicare and Medicaid. Then, you know, by doing all of that, they say they're taking food out of people's mouths and taking health care away from people. And they're all doing that just to give big tax cuts to the wealthy, the governor said. But Vice President J.D. Vance was on, you know, location and talking to, you know, people with a Protect American Manufacturing rally of sorts. And he took questions from the media, and some of the media were like, hey, what's your response to Democrats who say Republicans are just taking away, you know, the benefits for those who need it the most?
Yeah, well, I appreciate that question. Look, there are a couple of responses to that criticism. First of all, the only people that we say should not get free government health care benefits are illegal aliens and those who refuse to try to even look for a job. It's very common sense. We want, and look, we are going to bankrupt this country if we keep on giving the people's benefits, the people's Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security benefits to illegal aliens who have no legal right to be in this country and never paid into the system to begin with. That is never the design of those programs, is to give them to every person all over the world. They ought by right to belong to the American citizens who paid into those programs to begin with. And that's what we're fighting to make sure happens. And the second response I'd say to that is look, we did a lot in this legislation. Brian worked on it. The other representatives here worked very hard on this to make sure that a lot of our rural hospitals are struggling because of some of the policies of the Biden administration. So what we did is we put a lot of resources and a lot of changes in regulations to make it possible for our rural hospitals to stay open despite what the Biden administration did to them for 4 years. So our policy is very simple. Whether you're in a big city or a small town, we're going to fight for your access to health care. Whether you're an American citizen who's been here for 70 years or an American citizen who's been here for 2 years, we're going to fight for your access to a government that serves you. But if you're an illegal alien, you do not deserve government-paid health care benefits. You need to get out of our country, and that's as simple as that.
Illinois does have tax dollars going to undocumented residents in Illinois, non-citizens, those who may be in here illegally. Maybe they're here as asylum seekers. Regardless, it's different categories of non-citizens. And we had a program until about July 1st that had hundreds of millions of dollars over several years going to non-citizens health care coverage for those between 42 and 64, I believe. Well, Governor Pritzker, after seeing cost overruns and audits showing that there were significant problems with the program, he ended that with the new budget that started. But we still have about $160 million budget. We'll see if it goes over budget for this year, but it's for non-citizen seniors to get subsidized health care coverage in the state of Illinois. So obviously it's with the state's finances as they are, the amount of legacy debt we've got for pensions and other things, can we really afford that type of cost every year because of non-citizens in the country? The governor and those who support those programs say it's important to give that subsidy to these non-citizens, because if not, they would just end up in emergency rooms, and that would end up costing everybody more. So that's their answer, is to give these taxpayer subsidies to that healthcare space. But clearly you've got the Trump administration and Republicans in Congress that have said enough's enough, and they don't want those dollars going to non-citizens.
Well, you know what? The President of the United States made a promise, a sacred promise, that the only people who are going to lose access to health care are illegal aliens who shouldn't be in this country to begin with. Because I happen to believe that Medicaid belongs to American workers and American families. I happen to believe that when you are struggling in this country, we're generous people and we want to help you. but we want to help the people who have the legal right to be in the United States of America. So it's not about kicking people off of health care. It's about kicking illegal aliens the hell out of this country so that we can preserve health care for the American families who need it. And that's what the Democrats never talk about. That's what they'll never tell you. They'll say, well, Republicans want to do this to health care. They want to do that. They want to do all these terrible things. When in reality, if you look at what the Democrats have done, what they've tried to do is to allow millions and millions of illegal aliens into this country, to give them benefits that ought go by right to American citizens, and then to attack Republicans when we dare to stand up for the American citizens who have the right to be here.
And the conversation on all that's going to continue as we see the impacts and continued immigration enforcement. And now you've got the National Guard conversation working into it and so on. Fascinating times, and I hope you stay up with it with us at thecentersquare.com. Go to thecentersquare.com, sign up for the newsletter, and get that in your inbox with headlines each and every weekday morning. If you're feeling generous, donate as well at thecentersquare.com. But you can wake up with us here each and every weekday morning on YouTube for Illinois in Focus Daily, and also catch the podcast where you get podcasts uninterrupted. All right. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop, right here with the Center Square. Well, that was a long one. What are we looking at? Like 45 minutes? A lot of stuff going on, guys. The governor is going to be out this afternoon. He's going to be with the Attorney General of Illinois, and I'm sure other various like-minded politicians to continue talking about President Donald Trump's push for public safety in Chicago and elsewhere across the country. So we're going to have to revisit that conversation. Who knows what President Donald Trump may say today? Surely he's going to have some time in front of the media, as he has, but a lot of other things we got to tackle as well here with Illinois in Focus each and every weekday morning. Again, get the newsletter in your inbox, thecentersquare.com/Illinois. You can sign up for that, share it with your friends, stay plugged in, but of course, wake up with us here each and every weekday morning. Join the live chat, lively bunch there, sounding off on all kinds of things, but I tell you what, it's pushing up against the time for me to touch base with my team and get to work. So we'll see you back here tomorrow morning. I'm Greg Bishop. It's Illinois in Focus Daily, only with the Center Square.